Well, hello everyone. Here to show you that learning disability student is so far as talk about is like the many a subject, and of course what I had drawn right here is a number of things. Of course, this right here would be is of course is like what you call a little self portrait of me as like according for this right here would be of course memories from whenever I was say in is like whenever I was about 5 or 6 years old, something like that. Maybe about 6 or 7. Whenever I was young, from this and this subject right here is talking about for a learning disability student is talking about is from the memories from what I remember from kindergarten, from like preschool to kindergarten, through the through the through high school years. It's like it could be junior high or it's like middle school and high school years. But and then of course it could maybe be also related to maybe a little bit of homeschooling or something like that, some type of education. But basically, is I'll be working with right here is we're working with see a little bit some crayons, but other than that, I got markers right here. But basically, is talking about is with learning disability student, and of course this is something that that I been thinking about almost my whole life. That talking about is that whenever I was in school, that a lot of times I was in a special ed class, and a lot of times that according to what my parents say, that they never really found out. The teachers never really found out exactly what my diagnosis was, and then of course I hear that of course it's like borderline. He's a borderline personality disorder is and it's like just some type of a disability that I have that basically shows that it's explained inside of what you call like a little dialogue about talking about how well about about how the brain is functioning, about how well the mind is concentrated on. It's like which say with most students that they would have like I guess everybody would have their own type of way of learning, and of course it could be the way that the brain works is that if you were to think about look at the map of the world, and then you would think about is that the things that maybe that you would have to learn if you were to go to school, that a lot of times they would teach you stuff like your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's like ABCD, and then along with that spelling the alphabet backwards, and then such and such. But of course, this right here is the details I went ahead and added for like the classroom details. And with the classroom details that I went ahead and added is that which most classrooms I guess will be measured right about see here about maybe 10 10 10 feet you see here 10 feet length, 10 feet about 10 feet length, and then about 15 feet width, something like that. About 10 by 15 feet length and width, which most classrooms I guess that they would see here with with width see here with length and width. But I have most classrooms we measure at about pretty good size, but maybe about the size an office or something like that. But where they can have it to where they have a number of students that with some classrooms, if it's a public school or if it's a Catholic school or whatever you call it, and then more likely that you'll be able to hold about maybe 8 or 10 kids, something like that. But I remember whenever I was going to, I remember 3 or 4 elementary schools. It was Henderson and, Becky David. And then, of course, that was Fairmont and along with Cosley. So that would be about 4 of them that I went to. And then along with the high schools, Francis Howell North, and then along with the St. Charles West, and then Rockbridge High School. And, of course, with the middle school is that I went to, I went to Barnwell Middle School, and then along with the Jefferson Middle School. Those 2 middle schools. But I remember whenever they teach you that a lot of students would wonder that my handwriting back then, of course, that if I were to maybe write the today's date or something like that, or if I were to spell out, it's like spell out car, I'll go ahead and say, maybe cat, but I'll go ahead and say spell out car here. And it's like with the word car, that more likely that was kind of like what my handwriting looked like back then. And of course, it's like go ahead and use like the black marker, but of course I would maybe spell it that kind of like a kind of like that. And then of course it's like with the of course none of that right there would be my handwriting, but more likely that that was the handwriting that of course up there at the school that they wrote down. But of course my handwriting, of course, back in those days, it was more like if I were to spell car, then it would take up about 1.5 lines. It was that a lot of times that I would be able to get in between lines, and then sometimes it would be kind of scribbly, like a drive. See here, drive to the store. Like pen's kind of fading out, but you got that right there. You got my hand right there. But you have it to where with the writing, it is that whenever I was going to school, I remember that during from kindergarten to my senior year, that my handwriting would get smaller. But then of course, it's like so far as your education goes, it's like from what they taught you whenever you were in school, is that a lot of things that from what you remember whenever you were in school, that I remember that I pretty much learned about the same thing, and then of course learn things new, and then of course basically the same thing. And then you got right here, you guys see here planet Earth right here. But basically talk about the subject about learning disability is basically I guess the topic will be like learning disability, but then the subject I guess could be like math or science. And of course this a math problem, go ahead and use a math problem here. But of course one math problem I was able to memorize since my junior year, actually. See, it was 100 times 100. It's like multiply that. It's like it's for 10,000. And a lot of times people probably say in order to get your answer, it's like to borrow. It's like the 1, and then like it's say you would multiply the numbers, and then of course it's like you multiply 100 100 times it is to be able to get your answer. But then of course if us are familiar with like say long division, and of course with decimal or decimal fraction it is. But basically talk about is like with learning disability, is like the type of disability that of course I may have, of course, was learning a lot of this stuff, kind of took it gradually slower, and then of course it was easier at the time. But then of course that from what I remember, I could maybe go on for maybe maybe 3 hours about maybe the details I remember from a little bit about the classrooms and about the books that they would have you read and stuff. But then on the other hand too, that it's like wondering about why. It's like my favorite color has always been blue, and of course maybe I was born to wear blue it is. But of course it's like with the what I call your learning disability student is basically talking about me, is that any information that of course that the school never did find out any information about exactly what it was that my learning problem was, due to the fact because whenever I was in school, that a lot of times that of course that they always got on to me about that you shouldn't be laughing during class, or you need to be concentrating on your work or whatever it is. But a lot of times I was a pretty good student, and they even said that I was a good student, and more likely that I could probably tell anybody that it's like to be happy that for what you do have, be happy that that you're alive, other than the fact about if you were if you did go to school, such as being in a special needs class, or if you did have a behavior disorder or whatever it is. But based on the fact is about school, that I remember that whenever I was going to school, it seemed like it was never going to end, and of course that a lot of students were like, that of course they would pick on one another, and then it's like that I remember the memories that I did have a lot of times, of course, was spending time on the computer. If I remember right, that whenever I was in the fourth grade, it was I wanted to do stuff on the computer. I didn't really, I didn't want to go out to the playground, out to recess, or I did not want to, do too much, or not too much activities with, the other kids, or you say, and then, of course, with math and science and language arts and history, that the stuff that makes it a little bit more exciting, more likely is to kind of get in the groups, and then to kind of know about what do you know, and what do you remember. On the other hand, that if I say that either way, I'm sure we all have a good education, no matter if our grade point average maybe would have been less than perfect, but the course is to explain in your best of your own way of knowing about, of course, about who we are, what we were born to do, and who we are, and what we were born to do. We were born, say, is to have our own talents, our own artistic talents, is to keep that in mind, as something to be proud of. But so far as the learning disability students, along with me, it's like so far as the coloring on me, and then learning disability student coloring.